And then we have the type of problems where you have to solve. You know, if we look at what problem we have, it says find all solutions of the sine of x plus pi over 4 plus sine of x minus pi over 4 equals -1. So now what's different is we're solving for x. We're not showing that it equals this. In fact, it doesn't always equal that. It won't even work. What we're doing is we're solving. So we're figuring out what x value will work in here so that it actually equals -1. And then it says over this interval, which just means one cycle. So one time around the unit circle and be done. So it's from 0 all the way around to 2 pi. It's including 0, but we don't include 2 pi in our answer. Okay? And so here I have a sum formula, here I have a difference formula. So that's the first step. Take this, plug it into the sum formula. Take this, plug it into the difference formula. So let's try that out. So the sum formula for sine, we're going to take sine of the first thing, cosine of the second thing, plus cosine of the first thing, sine of the second thing. Okay, so now that's all for this one. Plus, and now I have to do it all for that one. That's a plus. So now the difference formula has sine of the first thing, cosine of the second thing, minus cosine of the first thing, sine of the second thing, pi over 4, and that equals -1. Okay, now you just say, wow, that got really crazy. There's a lot going on. But don't forget, we know what pi over 4 is. We know that that's root 2 over 2 for cosine. We know it's root 2 over 2 for sine. And so for all of these, for this one, I'm going to replace it with, so I've got sine of x times cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. Plus, and this one also, I have cosine of x, sine is root 2 over 2. And then I've got a plus. And then I go to the next one here. I've got sine of x and cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2 minus cosine of x sine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2 equals -1. All right, then we can kind of, it's simplified now, we can kind of look at it a little bit. Notice we have sine of x times root 2 over 2 plus sine of x times, these are the same thing, and I'm adding, so technically I have two of them. So I'm going to say 2 sine of x root 2 over 2. Okay, and then what else do we have? We have cosine of x root 2 over 2 minus cosine of x root 2 over 2. What happens there? They cancel, right? So these guys cancel each other out. And so now I just have what's left is -1. And so now I have to solve this. Well, this is all multiplication, so you can multiply in any order, which means if you have something on top and something on bottom, they can cancel if they're the same. So those two cancel. So now I have sine of x times the square root of 2 equals -1. Divide both sides by the square root of 2. Rationalize. So now I have sine of x equals, let's see here, if I rationalize -root 2 over 2. Now, we have to figure out what's the x value, okay? So that comes in our unit circle, comes in. Sine is negative, right? It says -root 2 over 2, and sine is negative in the second and third quadrant. So that's where our angles are going to be. And we're actually going to have more than one angle. This is not inverse. This is more than one angle. And I can tell that because it says, remember, from 0 to 2 pi. So anything that works from 0 to 2 pi. Notice I said all solutions. So anything that works from 0 to 2 pi. And we actually have two spots that sine is going to be -root 2 over 2. Now, do you remember on the unit circle that root 2 over 2 is 45 degrees? Or let's use radians. So we have then that this is -root 2 over 2, and so that is, let's see, it's a pi over 4, and it's 1 pass, so it's 5 pi over 4, and then this would be 6 pi over 4, and this one's going to be 7 pi over 4. So here's my two answers, 5 pi over 4 and 7 pi over 4. And that's how you solve. Watch it several times if you need to kind of understand things a little bit better. Hopefully I did a good job explaining things in detail. Good luck.